So, hi everyone, as Kresho said, I'm a JavaScript engineer here, Emojineer, sorry. I really like playing with Webpack, and I hope after this presentation you'll feel my excitement and the power of Webpack. So, ever since Webpack came out, there was a huge, constant torrent of hate towards it. The main reason behind was the lack of documentation, horrible examples, and most of all, no examples whatsoever. And in Webpack 1, a basic configuration looked something like this. You touched the wrong button and everything stopped working. Then you lost 5-6 hours. Your PM was constantly nagging you, when was the setup going to be done? Why is this still not working? And I hope this presentation will help you master all of these buttons and probably reduce them to a single lever. So first, let's talk about how Infinum loves Webpack. So we shipped Webpack to production in February 22nd. This was the first time that Webpack came alive here. 5 months next, I joined the Webpack organization in order to help with maintaining the HTML loader, because I basically wanted to learn more about it. I failed a bit since the HTML loader was basically API complete, so there wasn't a lot of work, but I still got immersed in the organization, and I'm currently trying to submit my first commit in the Webpack core. Next up, on July 30th, we've shipped Webpack 2. So this was basically while Webpack 2 was still in alpha. So that tells you how stable it was. And on the 2nd of October, we've shipped our first plugin that helped a lot of Rails guys implement Webpack in their workflow. You'll hear more about that in our next talk by Cookie. So where do we use it? Well, basically everywhere that has web in it. We use it in JS applications, React, Angular, Backbone. We use it in a lot of static pages for internal stuff and for public stuff. We also built a static website generator. Well, that was a semi-bad idea, but it works very, very well now. And whenever we have a need for a quick mock-up of something with JS and SCSS, we use it. So for instance, for web slices for our native guys. So let's start by dissecting Webpack with its core concepts. There are only a few of them, and if you master them, you'll be able to create a very powerful configuration. The first thing to remember is the dependency tree. Now, this is the first, well, sorry for my language, mindfuck people get. You can require and import CSS files in your JS code, or images, videos, JSONs, PDFs, .6, whatever. And you'll see how. We start with an entry point. This is our basic application.js, main.js, index.js. There can be a lot of them or only one of them. Webpack will know how to handle it. Then, of course, we need an output. This is basically a folder which you tell Webpack to output all the processed files, all the images, SVGs, and whatever. And you explain to Webpack how to do it using rules, or formerly called loaders. So this is how you tell Webpack, so I have a CSS file, do something with it. And using a loader, which is a simple processing function, he, well, basically transpiles it. And next up, we have plugins. Now, Webpack itself is a set of a lot of plugins. It's very, very extensible. And using plugins, you can extend it to an enormous extent. You can even change some of the basic inner workings of it. Plugins can be downloaded from and installed from npm, or they can even be written inline. So that's it. Let's cover some applied usage. So I'll try to cover all the concepts here in some code. So let's say we have an index.js file with a simple console log, and we have a homepage.js file which we hope to process with Webpack. So if you ever use Node, this should be very familiar. So for those who didn't, it requires a function that looks for this file and basically does something with it. So Webpack in this case, or Node, knows that file exists. Now with ES6, we have the import syntax here. And when you use Webpack 2, you can use import or require interchangeably. But in Webpack 1, you use only require, if you don't have Babel, but more on that a little bit later. So here, we imported a homepage file which has a homepage console log and hello world. Now, if we run this through Webpack, we'll see 2 console logs in our browser. So how do we write a simple, very, very straightforward configuration for this? So everything this configuration needs to have is an entry point, which is a path to our index.js file, and it needs to have an output point, which is a path to our dist folder and what we're going to call our JavaScript bundle. This is basically what you did with Gulp, is where you bundled all of them or basically concatenated it. So what Webpack does here is a bit more advanced, but I won't bore you with this, since this is not really Webpack 101. So when we run this with Webpack progress, we get a single file here, script.js. It has its size, and when it says when submitted, we know it's in our dist folder. Down below, you can also see all the required files in the code. So homepage.js and index.js is our entry point. Okay, so let's do something else. Let's add JSON here. So what we are going to do is we have a data.json file that has a name and a last name of a user, let's say, and then we want to console log the, oh, I didn't add that code, sorry. I want to console log the user's name. So what we need here, this is now getting a little bit hairy. Just kidding. We need to add a loader. So we have a regex here that just says all the files that end with JSON use a very smartly named loader, JSON loader. And we plug it in our Webpack config. And now what we hope to see is the user's name in the console log. Now it's important to note that in this case, the JSON is going to be parsed in the code. We won't see it as an emitted file. So again, you can see it's a bit larger. It's larger for exactly the size of that JSON. And you can see it's required right here. OK, so let's add something more complicated, like an image. So we have like here an unicorn.jpg image, which we require in our, or import in our JS. And when we console log it, we expect to see the file name of that image. Now, the file name will change a bit, and I'll explain why in just a few slides. So what do? We use file loader. And the file loader tests for all the JPEG files and requires them, and that's it. Now, when we open it, we see a hashed file name. So this is actually the file that we find in our dist folder. We use fingerprinting here, which is on by default, because it's a good practice, to allow you to cache files more easily. So again, hashed file, and then we have the required file down below. Now, a friend of mine, which is sitting here in the audience, told me that when a developer comes to a site that he's maintaining, and then he sees a hashed file in the browser, it really fucks him up, and he doesn't know what to do, so he wants to see a name. Well, we can change that also. All we have to do is supply an options object for the file loader, which says name minus hash.ext. So this here is very important to note. This square brackets hash and all of these words can be used wherever Webpack defines an output. So for instance, if we want to hash our JS file, which we output, that we saw a few slides ago, which is somewhere here, sorry. Well, I missed it. Here, we can just use curly brackets hash, and it will output with the hash. So what we expect to see now is unicorn minus hash.jpg. And exactly it's what we see. We can also alleviate hash here, but it's not a good idea. OK, so now I hope everybody knows how to create a simple, basic Webpack configuration. Let's add some more complex stuff, because using this, let's be honest, you can't do anything. So yeah, we process some JS files. Woohoo. So let's add SCSS here, or SES. So we want to, let's imagine this is our simple project structure. We have our index file, index SCSS, and unicorn.jpg. Again, our unicorn. And we want to set that unicorn as a background image on a web page. And here we write a simple SCSS code, which we require, now this is important to note, we require unicorn.jpg. And of course, we have to require that file in our entry point. That's it. Now, let me talk about a new concept here. This is a bit sneaky, putting concepts in the complex configuration, called loaders. We can chain loaders. So if one loader isn't enough, for instance, if a JSON loader isn't enough, we can add more loaders to it. Now, the only thing to remember here is that we do it like a stack. We use a loader, and we pop it, and then we use another loader, and then we pop it. So instead of a loader, we have loaders here, which is an array, which in this case will take two loaders, CSS loader and SES loader. Now, why? SES loader here knows how to read SES files, and it can process them and create them and put them in a CSS format. But again, Webpack still doesn't understand how to interact with the CSS file. So we need to use CSS loader, which will tell him, okay, so you do this, this, and this with it. You'll see what later. Now, this was how we did it in Webpack 1. In Webpack 2, we use something called use. This is a bit better because if you wanted to supply some options here, you see these are strings, so you cannot actually put an object with options. You needed to use query params. So you would do an exclamation point and a property name that equals an and so on, so on. This turned really ugly, and you had a line that spanned a couple of 100 characters long. So we transform it into a new syntax, which is basically the same thing. It just, instead of strings, it gets the objects with loader and options and whatever. So, okay, what do we have here? Well, still we have nothing. If we run this, nothing will happen. We won't have a CSS file outside because Webpack, while I'm now understanding CSS, doesn't really know what to do with it. So we have two options here. We can either inline it in our HTML file, or we can output it as a separate file. Let's cover both of them. So inlining works with style loader. Now, style loader is a really, really special thing. All it does is actually creates a simple JS snippet, which has your code in it, and whenever you run your web page, it will copy that CSS code and place it in head and put it in a script tag. This is really special and really, really useful for hot reloading. But this is not the point of our exercise, and we want to output it as a file. Now, this is where the reality hits you, and you understand that you're still not using a product that's out yet. So Webpack 2 is not still out. It's RC, but yep, poop. For outputting files, we need to use a plugin called, very creatively, Extract Text plugin. It does whatever it says, so it extracts the text in a file. So why did I put the poop emoji here? Because you cannot use a new syntax here still with it. But as you see, we need some PRs to get that fixed, so you know what to do. Create a PR if you know what you're doing. So we need to revert back to the old syntax. So we're going to use loaders and an array here, and then we're going to add the plugin. So in our configuration now, we add a new plugin called Extract Text plugin, and then we put the desired file name. Again, we can use hash here. And now we use the Extract Text plugin. We supply it with the loaders he will use, and that's it. So the API is currently really dirty and not really what you want. You want it to be able to use with use and to chain it. So this will come really soon. So what do we expect to see now? Well, we expect to see our required file name. So if you remember, we required our unicorn, and we expect to see our style CSS emitted. Again, note that we actually see the files we use. Here it is, in CSS, and you can also see through all the loaders it went before it was emitted. And if we pick into our outputted file, we see that it actually creates a processed name of the image. Okay, so this is how the complete configuration looks like. So we require and install our Extract Text plugin. We have our entry, output, and our rules with the file loader and the SCSS rules, and also our plugin here. Okay, so let's add Babel here, because why not? So the syntax follows. We have a test here for JS, and we have a Babel loader, so creative. And we can add some options here for presets for latest. So this will enable us to use some Babel functions. You can add more presets and create more complex stuff. For instance, with React, you would want to use JS6 here, and we can use async await, and why not? Create our bloated bundle. Be careful while using them. But again, it's extremely simple. So we have our rule here. The order of rules here doesn't really matter, especially in this configuration. And that's it. We'll see the output file, and it's a bit bigger than before because it has some Babel overhead, but very little. So that's it. Let's conclude with a quick recap here what we learned today. So important concepts. We have an entry point. This is a file or multiple files where Webpack starts. I keep saying multiple. Multiple files are for code splitting, so you can separate your vendor bundle from your user code. Then we have an output. This is where everything ends. This is when you run Webpack, you'll have a concise configuration. We have rules, how we get to there, and we have plugins, and this is to modify the path we go. So remember, kids, use Webpack 2 currently, but be careful. It's still in RC, but it's feature complete. So other plugins need to follow, and the documentation needs to be finished, even though it's really good. So read the documentations. Remember to use webpack.js.org. Now, a few days ago, Google didn't push this website yet when you search for it, but as of today, the webpack.js.org website is at the top of the results. This documentation is really, really good. So it has all of these concepts explained in depth with a lot of more advanced stuff added. It has very good guides for code splitting, for hot reloading, for dev server, which you'll hear a little bit more about in Darko's presentations. And it has a complete documentation of the API and everything that you can do with Webpack. If you want to play with Webpack, you can use webpack.bin. It provides some boilerplate code for you, so you don't have to write Webpack configuration. But if you want to try something out, this is like a replacement for CodePen or JS bin, something like that. I usually use this when I need to mock up something real quick and I'm on my mobile phone. And I published this. Yeah, why not? Why not work on Webpack on your mobile phone? I don't. So I also published all the code I've used here. So this project can be used like a starting point. It's not very good, but it will get you started at least. So you can at least copy some concepts from it. So that's it. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. Yes? The guy in the back.
Can you use Webpack 1 config in Webpack 2?
Yes, you can. It is a bit better. It has some of the inner workings are rewritten. So for instance, tree shaking is a bit better than it was in Webpack 1. So that's the dead code elimination and stuff like that. And it's quite a bit faster. Now, you can use it with some versions of the Webpack 2 beta. But what it will actually do is it will actually tell you which properties changed in the error message. So they created a JSON validation. So it says, like, you don't use modules anymore, use XYZ or whatever. So, and also, on the official documentation, you have a comprehensive guide on migrating from Webpack 1 to Webpack 2. It's really good, and it took me like 1 hour to switch everything over on a biggish project. Skukan?
Yeah, I have a question. In the first example, you used require, but in the other ones, you used import.
Yeah, so as I've said, import comes with Webpack 2, and require comes with Webpack 1. In Webpack 2, you can use also require, so you don't have to rewrite your code if you already written it out using require. And also, you can have import in your code if you added Babel to your Webpack 1 configuration. Karisha, you had a question? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
What I'm wondering is, what are the main benefits of using this building tool instead of some other build tools like I don't know, Grunt or stuff? As I understand it, this takes care of dependencies. So it just brings everything together, and in your config file you just say build this with this and this with this and so on. But what other benefits does it bring? I mean, why would one decide to switch from other building tool to this one?
Well, mainly is the speed. So as I've used Webpack, and I used Grunt and tried Gulp, so Webpack was much faster. So that's one selling point, and it's a huge selling point. If you wait for a project to build, when you save something in 2 seconds, then in 30 seconds. So that's a huge thing to do. And then another one is config readability. Even though a lot of people say the Webpack config is really complex to read, for me, Grunt config is even more complex. It creates additional overhead, and especially if many people do this, and I did this, they just find a thing, so Grunt how to compile CSS, and they copy and just paste the configuration they found on GitHub. This creates a complete mess. Now with Gulp is a bit better because it's code over configuration, and that's also great. But again, Webpack is a bit faster than Gulp. And the extensibility, at least what I found, is much higher in Webpack than in any other build tool. Here it's important to note the rollup. But the rollup is currently used and currently used for libraries, even though you can use it in projects. Was that okay? Okay.
How easy is it to customize the building process? You need to write a plugin for it, or?
Well, when I started out, I wanted to write plugins, and whatever I touched, there was a plugin for it. Whatever. So basically, there is everything. But writing a simple plugin, especially inline, is also very easy. So you can tailor it. If you know JS, creating your plugins won't be any problem. Ask Kukan.
Yeah, I have one more question. You reminded me now. When Rollup came out,
Okay.
One of its biggest advantages was its tree shaking. It was much better than Webpack 1.
Yep.
How is it compared to Webpack 2? Improved tree shaking?
I don't know the numbers between Rollup and Webpack 2, but I know that the tree shaking improved massively between Webpack 2 and Webpack 1.
Maybe you should tell what tree shaking is.
Okay. So this is something that I'm not completely sure of. So if I say anything wrong, just stop me, crash up. So tree shaking is a principle in which you remove unused and dead code. For instance, if you require a Lodash library, it comes with a huge amount of functions available to you. But if you use only one of them, probably you'll have only one of them actually in your bundle. In reality, more of them because they use them interchangeably in their own code. But again, it's a much smaller bundle than it would be if you just copied the minified code over in your bundle.
If I may just add,
Yes.
one big thing about tree shaking is the difference between require and import. Because with require, you always have to require the entire file. Import, technically, should say just import this one function, it will
Yeah.
import just this
Yeah.
one function. And that's what Rollup does.
Yeah. So if you use a named export or a default export, Lucien.
I wanted to ask a similar question. Basically, is tree shaking even possible with other build systems like Grunt or Gulp?
I'm not sure, but I don't think so. It is.
Well, not quite.
Well, that's kind of the point of Webpack.
Yeah.
It was built with the idea that tree shaking becomes possible and code splitting and all features like that.
Oh, I would just want to add for code splitting, so don't be alarmed. You'll see if you use current version of Webpack, if your file exceeds 300 kilobytes, you'll see a warning, which will point you to documentation explaining how to do code splitting. So it even helps you with that.
Actually, code splitting is possible with all other.
Yeah, okay. Especially the basic code splitting between the vendor bundle and user bundle. But for instance, with Webpack, you can achieve code splitting between routes. So for instance, if a user visits a public route, it will only get the public JS and not the admin JS, which can also be added security bonus. Yes, Krishna.
Okay. In my company, we use Gulp for pushing stuff to production. How would you do that with Webpack?
Well, you wouldn't do it with Webpack. So, yep. So I'm a big supporter of the Unix principle. So do one thing and do it good. And Webpack is a bundling tool, not a pushing tool. But you can achieve the same principle with a simple one-liner script to use SCP. But of course, people think that I'm wrong, and there is a plugin for pushing through to an SSH server.
Okay, so.
But people do use Gulp with Webpack.
Yes, of course. You can
So
you can
Gulp
use.
for pushing and Webpack is for bundling.
Yeah, of course. I don't know why would you do that, but yes, you can do that. But there is a plugin. Because the plugin gets the notification when the compile time is over. So it actually knows, okay, so everything in this folder is ready. I can do whatever. And then you can run SSH commands and push it or deploy it or whatever. Yeah, it's dirty and it's ugly and I don't like it, but it's possible. Sorry?
It's eval.
Yes, it is. I've looked at the code. Yes, it is. Eval and
Exec.
yeah, exec sync actually, not even asynchronous exec. Okay, so I'm I'm gonna shut it down.
One more.
Yeah, sure.
Can you import files via URL?
Well, you can, but that's a dynamic import, and I wasn't able to set it up. I had a task on a Devil project with. No, it's not. I'm not sure if I actually can say the official name, but it doesn't matter. So where we had local dynamic requires, and it was a huge pain in the ass to set up because I still don't know so much about JS and especially the inner workings of the require and import. But presumably, yes, you can import from URLs. Yes, theoretically, yes. But I don't think you should probably be doing it. You can get it from your code. Yeah, you would use npm here. This is actually npm or yarn or bower.
Or CDN,
Yeah, or over CDN. But you shouldn't. If you have Webpack, use it with the package managers because that's when you get that free shaking, which comes automatically out of the box. Yes, Krishan.
Don't. Yeah. I got it.
But you can. You probably can.
Don't.
Yes. Yes, Lucian.
I noticed you wrote a packing image, unicorn, JPEG or whatever.
Yes.
What if that string is dynamically created? Either in JS or CSS, SCSS or whatever.
Yes, that's the dynamic require, dynamic import.
Okay, so for example in SCSS I have for each map do something and
Okay, for SCSS when it
Webpack handle that.
so for SCSS it's a bit simpler because when Webpack compiles SCSS code, it will create an CSS file which has all the files. That's where we're in the realm of the dynamic requires. So you'll have to support that.
How do you do that?
I have no idea. Sorry.
Every bigger code base they have a lot of dynamic requires basically. So
Well, we had that problem in the plugin that Dark was going to talk about. So basically, a workaround is, and I'm not sure if it's a good workaround. There isn't actually a standard for this, but we create a JS file where you list all of the files that you're going to use in code. So this basically stops.
you have to map your
Yeah.
all of your files or whatever that has like a key and path.
Yeah, you just require all the images you're going to use dynamically. So in theory, dynamic imports should be straightforward. They're not.
So you have to think about it manually
Yeah.
yourself. There's nothing Webpack provides for you to do that.
Basically, yes. Unless you figure out and tell me about the dynamic require. Yeah. That's all? Okay, go ahead.
Webpack is purely a Canvas product, probably?
No, absolutely not. So it's I don't. So we are smart, but I don't think we're that smart. Sorry, guys. So no, it's not. It's currently under the jQuery Foundation. It was recently brought into jQuery Foundation. It's a love child of Sokra, the main developer, and then the guy you saw a bit earlier, Sean. He's the main spokesperson of the Webpack. So you'll probably see a lot of his name in everything that is. So I missed it again. In all that is Webpack. Sorry. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so thanks for all the great questions.